Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining for today's webinar, Critical Thinking in the Age of AI, How to Prime Your Mind for the Next Evolution of Work. I've got a lot of stuff to cover today, so I'm going to be kind of jamming through it. But for those of you that are on the call live, make sure that you throw your questions in. I check them. You should be able to go in the Q&A, and I'll check them on a regular basis as I'm going through, because I know that that always helps everybody when they get to hear what others are thinking. But I'm going to dive in. If you're anything like my clients, myself, or just about everybody that I've run into, we're all kind of dealing with what does AI mean for our workplace. I will say that this session is not about what I tend to see out there, which is a lot of fear messages of like AI is coming for our jobs and all those types of things. And I'm not trying to minimize what AI means in the workplace because I think we've yet to see all the things that are going to unfold. But I do think there's something that I've considered needed by all individuals in the workplace previous to AI, but I think AI is accelerating the need for us to really dive into critical thinking skills. Um, what I mean by that is I think AI accelerates the visible, tangible stuff, but really what's going to show up for us is the way that we think about things. That's the uniqueness that we bring. That's the fingerprint we bring. That's our perspectives, our world experiences. And AI is constantly mining from what's already been created versus also catching those kind of the what I call the third dimension of connectivity that is present as human beings are interacting with each other. So we differentiate ourselves by the way that we think. So traditionally, when we think about AI or what I've been seeing show up is this just kind of this manufactured urgency. You got to do more, better, faster, and AI is going to deliver faster, but it doesn't mean that AI is going to be able to deliver better. So that it's going to create that quantity and it's going to create that speed. But we're starting to see it now with people calling it slop and that type of stuff. It really is our ability to go through and find the information that is the most useful, the most relevant, as well as what does it mean to improve upon that. And usually those improvements haven't been done yet. There's going to be a situation where everyone has the same tools everywhere. Everyone's going to have access to AI. And so that's a little bit of a level playing field. What is going to set us up for that? I don't even know if it's the competitive edge, but really that edge of contribution. And I get the reason I say I'm against that competitive edge is once again I think it speaks to this. There's this finite amount of opportunity out there, and I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of expansiveness to the opportunity that's out there. I think it'll look different than what we're experiencing now. I'm going to double down on it's your unique thinking that really sets this up as a differentiator. So what's beautiful about that is I always like to reference just like you have a unique fingerprint than anybody else. It doesn't make you better than anybody else, but it does make you different. That uniqueness really shows up in the fingerprint of how you think, how you see the world, how you experience things. And so the more that we can dive into that, the better. As I mentioned before, AI is speeding up the tangible. So the reports, the summaries, the drafts, what I call kind of the 80% of the clay to get on the slab to start making a sculpture. AI is going to be able to pull that together. That's where the efficiency comes from. But the art of creating an actual sculpture, that's where we come in. And then, so what I like to label that as is our enduring human skills. So, how do we get those to rise up? Those are the thinking skills, the way that for decades, honestly, the way that we think and saw things, half the time we were told, just, go do the thing, get it done, and we don't need to hear your opinion. I think that's going to change. And I think that could be a welcome change if we're comfortable with what our viewpoints and recommendations are and have those muscles in shape. So that's what today is about diving into. Well, what does that actually look like? Thinking is such a, ethereal thing. You can't see it. It all happens within our mind. So here's how I want to break this down. One, I want us to think about critical thinking is different than how we may have traditionally described it. In kind of old school way of describing critical thinking, it's been evaluating an issue objectively with no emotion, no bias, and then making a clear judgment from it. And if you think about it, that's been trying to gear people to be a little bit more like a computer. A calculator doesn't get emotional about the numbers in there, right? Doesn't go like, oh my gosh, you spent too much. It just says, this is how much you spent. And I say that from experience. But when you think of critical thinking now, I want us to look at the limitation that the traditional definition has. This was built for a world that was about reducing the friction. Let's get to that black and white thinking as fast as possible. Well, AI is actually really great at this black and white thinking. And I get that, there's still an evolution to AI and it's got hallucinations and you got to check the data and the research. And I've got a feeling they're going to be getting better and better at that as things move on. I think AI is going to corner the market on that black and white thinking. So, us being able to look at things from that more nuanced thinking. So, this is the model that I recommend using. And this is just kind of how I'm capturing what I'm seeing as our chance for those enduring human capabilities. If you look at the blue arrow at the top, this is self-focus, and I'm that's the skill of metacognition. I'm going to go into details of what each of these look like. But if you think about it, it's my ability to kind of understand what am I thinking, what am I experiencing. Underneath that, that other blue arrow is the other focused, being able to see the impact of my behaviors on others and build relationships with others. These two blue arrows, this is actually nothing new. If you're familiar with emotional intelligence, this is kind of calling out the skills of emotional intelligence, but I'm separating it this way because I do think there's this capacity that is missing in some of us or is not as agile, is this ability to kind of flex from self to other. When I'm coaching, when I'm training, I tend to run into people who are really good at self-awareness and noticing their thoughts and feelings and understanding where they come from, and sometimes not able to flip over to what are other people experiencing. Or I have people who are very other attuned, very aware of what other people are doing, but not really checking in with themselves and staying grounded in that. So it is a bit of a balance game. So that's why I've got it visually set up this way. The four thinking skills that are enabled heavily by our metacognition and our relational impact is our ability for creative synthesis, strategic insight, nuanced judgment, and reflective decision making. Now, I'm going to go into that. They may be fancy ways to phrase things, but I chose these phrases because I felt like it captured the multiple things that kind of go in those buckets. I've been seeing people kind of call out some of these things in single moments and itemizing it as this really important thing, like, well, we need to get better at ideation. And I tried to create a little bit of a framework for you so you can see it captured in one spot. So it doesn't feel like you've got to develop 100 things at once. So let me get into what are these. I'm gonna be going through definitions. If I'm speeding through too quickly, let me know. And I'm also going to be giving tips on how do you get that thinking skill in shape. So first is that metacognition. I said before, this is the inner work. This is the stuff that is the most important. It's the thinking about your thinking, that very self-focused layer. The sub skills, I mentioned emotional intelligence, that ability to regulate your emotions, self-awareness, awareness of how you're impacting others. Another one is self-compassion. They did a study around self-compassion and how it was an indicator of the individual actually being more successful. Now, I don't have that study up. I'll be sure to include it in the email, but it went over how much the way that we talk to ourselves. Are you, scathing towards yourself? Are you hypercritical towards yourself? All those voices, that judgmental voice that we probably picked up from our parents, school teachers, coworkers, bosses, friends. What are we housing in there? Do you have a compassionate voice that talks about learning from mistakes, or do you have someone who really rails on you every time you drop the ball? This is a big indicator. So being disciplined about listening to that voice and then checking in of what do I want to turn that to? What's the compassionate response to that? I'm going to let you know this is one that I've got to work on a regular basis. When I'm left to my own devices, I can say my mother's voice. There's a few friends in there. There's a few work people that are in there, and whatever they did, I definitely amplified it by 1,000. So I have to be really disciplined on how am I talking to myself about the situation? Am I just scaring myself every morning when I wake up? Our ability to minimize our biases, the even being aware of, what, I'm a little biased this way. My experience is, I'm a female. I live in California. I'm of a certain age. Like there's things that I am going to be biased to naturally. So I have to be intentional about how do I change up what my focus is? What stuff do I read? What stuff do I expose myself to broaden my way of viewing the world and understanding it? Intellectual humility. Are you somebody that sees yourself as, I know this stuff, I'm the expert. No one knows more than me. That's going to be, you're going to be the most closed off to hearing something different. Intellectual humility sets you up to have that growth mindset, to be able to learn from others, to see yourself as never quite the full expert, that there's always room for you to learn more. I think that gets harder to do when we're talking about things that we spend a lot of time in. And sometimes it's harder to do when we've told ourselves this group of people or this particular person is not someone that I should learn from. So the more malleable that is, the more metacognition is working. And then what's called a balanced time perspective, that we're able to examine and look at the past and build acceptance with it. Doesn't mean that we have to approve of things that happened in the past, but that we're able to accept the reality of it. I always like to say, like, how fast can you get your arms wrapped around the reality of what actually occurred and not try to sugarcoat it with to make us feel better about it, and not try to laser point into the problems and amplify the problems more than necessarily what was working. But I always use the analogy of a mirror. A mirror just captures what it reflects. It doesn't judge it. So how well can you do that with the past? With the future, can you have a reasonable amount of hope? This doesn't mean that you're just Pollyanna and everything is going to be fine and I don't have to worry about anything and I'm not going to even focus on, being intentional about anything because it'll all just work out. No, we have to be intentional. We have to take in the reality of what the current situation is, but can we amplify some hope of we still see that there's positive potential in the future? If not, your brain really just goes to defense mode and it's an exhausting physical experience as well as emotional experience. And then the present tense. Can we engage with the present tense with a level of openness? And those muscles flexed across those three time kind of perspectives. It's not always the easiest to do. A lot of us will sit in the future from a place of anxiety, and I raise my hand as part of that troop. With the past, we may ruminate about it and feel, and either just, want to make it worse than it was because we don't feel validated in it, or we want to make it better than what it was so we feel better about ourselves. But we've really got to be able to flex into that I'm going to accept, embrace reality as it was. We only know that it was reality if from based on the things that we saw, heard, and of course we have to know that we have a limited understanding of that reality, that hope, and then being open to the present. Now, what can you do to get that thinking muscle in shape? A simple practice is just starting to notice and document your thoughts without judgment. People love journaling, but really even just going like, this is what I thought today. Catching yourself in what you're thinking and noticing, was it compassionate? Was it not compassionate? How much am I thinking about my past and ruminating about it? How much am I imagining all the bad things in the future? How much am I thinking about the future of what could work out for me? What do I want? Those types of things, really building that muscle. It's just noticing it. Even if you just notice it for a few seconds while you're in the shower, while you're driving, that you're just paying attention to, oh, what thoughts are kind of rambling through me? The advanced practice is actually identifying your thoughts and noticing your emotions. Now, some of you may be really great at this. I actually had to do some work on this. My upbringing was very much like stunt those emotions, focus on getting things done. And now I'm proud to say my phrase is I swim in the deep end of all emotions. So starting to go, what's that emotion that I'm experiencing? And you can go a layer deeper. Why do I think I'm having that emotion to this particular situation? Yes, it could be like that's a warranted emotion for the situation, but where did I learn that that emotion was warranted? Am I the only one having this emotional reaction? What history may be coming into the equation with me? It doesn't dismiss the emotion. It just gives you a little bit more context as to why that's showing up for you. What I want to call out is that AI is kind of causing us to and technology in general, and honestly, the last generation is we've been kind of focused on reducing friction, and our brain was actually meant to tolerate some friction. When it comes to metacognition, the friction that we've got to get more comfortable with is that I'm imperfect, that the world is imperfect, that other people are imperfect, that I can sit in that imperfection, that things aren't showing up and people aren't showing up, including myself, the way that I'd ideally want. Can I sit with that imperfection and still leave compassion on the table? So the way to walk away from this when it comes to metacognition is that your internal operating system is deciding whether or not those four muscles that I'm going to get into, those thinking muscles that I'm going to get into right now, if they're working at all. That metacognition is really the key that unlocks a lot of these other ones and allows you to really go to the fullest extent that you have in your capabilities. The better we are at this, the more we drop the cost of being wrong. The more compassionate we are, the more that we're aware of ourselves, the less that we need everything to go perfectly. All right. So let's get into these four. We've got creative synthesis, which is, look, that's a fancy way of saying creativity, but I wanted to call out synthesis because it is about bringing things together. And we've got to tap into our childlike thinking to do this. So with this, you've got imagination. We know what imagination is. But what I find is that as adults, we've been primed to use imagination to predict the thing that might go wrong versus imagining all the things that we want. Our ability to ideate, to come up with multiple different options that might happen. And that means we have to suspend for a moment picking the right idea, that we are able and comfortable to hear from others and ourselves, just a group of ideas. And ideally as divergent as possible, as out there as possible and different than the others. And being open to novelty, hearing things that we haven't heard before, that this is a concept that hasn't been done before. If you find yourself saying that's just not the way we do things, then know that your creative synthesis is probably not at the fullest level that it could be. We've all been kids before. We've all done childlike thinking. We need to suspend that it's actually a maturity thing. It's actually a brain capability that we need to engage. So the simple practice is to engage in play. Find something that that reminds you of being a kid. Like even if I like to go bike riding for whatever reason, riding a bike makes me feel like a kid. I used to paint. I try to paint now, drawing. I do those things that do not require perfection from me. I don't need to be the best bike rider on the path. I paint, and oftentimes I actually throw away what I create because I just protected that as something that I do that doesn't require someone else to like it or for me to even like it. I just use its expression on a page. It doesn't have to be any of these classic things. It's whatever, maybe video games, that's how you play. Whatever it is that taps into that fun, that free spirit. Um, the advanced version of this is start to embed ideation into the way that you do work. So whether that's, and honestly, invite other people into it because that energy of ideating off of other people and bouncing ideas off of each other, but you have to kind of set it up as the caveat is we are here to ideate quantity. We are not here to judge quality. That comes at a different meeting. And I would recommend protecting that meeting. And it could be a meeting for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. You can do a day of play. But I just want you to know that it doesn't have to be this whole, onslaught of time. It can even just be we're going to take 10 minutes and just ideate. I like to separate it out because the sooner that you move into judging an idea, the more people still have an emotional attachment to the idea that they shared and they get like, oh, I didn't share a good idea, it didn't get used in the meeting. But if you separate it, we're like, we're going to do 10 minutes. We'll see each other later this afternoon and we'll start to sort through it. But we're going to take 10 minutes and just ideate. And that's all that it is. There's something about the sanctity of that, like, that your playtime is sacred and you can embed that into the way that you do work. What you want to do is build that friction ability of tolerating uncertainty. I don't know if this is going to be a good idea. I don't know if this idea is going to turn out to be something great. So let's not throw it away just because we don't know if others will like it or buy into it, that we are uncertain of what the reactions from others are going to be, that we're risking a little bit of going into a future that doesn't exist yet and coming up with an idea that we have no idea will be viable. And so creativity, you need to understand this is a little bit of the biggest muscle. Metacognition is setting you up to be able to do more of this. Creative thinking is the thing that AI hasn't done. Now, it may look creative because it's pulling from other people's ideas, but anything that's data driven is grounded in the past because the data has to exist somewhere. That means it's already been developed. Now, it may be new to you when you see it or somebody else, but it's not brand new. The creative part, you coming up with something, and yes, someone else might generate something similar because we all learn from each other. We've all, musicians learn from other musicians, writers learn from other writers. All the books that we've read have fed that, just like AI is going to influence the way that we think. But our unique culmination of that is what really brings the new content to the world. That's our unique contribution. Okay, strategic insight is the second one. This is this ability to see further than the data lets you see. The data may show you things like patterns, but you've got to be able to take that and have some insight around what you're actually seeing. It requires a level of optimism, believing that there's something to see there that's worth seeing, pattern recognition, that you're starting to see where the patterns are. AI might be able to call some of that out, but you being able to see that intuition of connection, that intuition is actually a biological process where your subconscious is picking up on patterns and little meta moments that your conscious mind may not notice. So you could bring in a data spreadsheet into a room. And we do coaching around this, around presentations all the time is, oh, I've got a really beautiful slide with all the data points on. But the service that you're providing is not just that data point. And in the past, that used to be it. We put together beautiful slides, and it's easy to digest data. That used to be the service that we provide. It now has to go up a level higher. I'm going to argue it should have always been a level higher, is that we're presenting data, but we're also going from my area of expertise. This is what I'm seeing. These are the insights that I'm seeing, the connectivity, how it should inform decision making. We've got to be able to go in there and have a viewpoint on the data that we're seeing and share what our perspective is. People may shoot it down, they may not agree with it, but we've got to be able to kind of glue some of this together for folks. We've got to have long-term thinking, not just in the moment thinking, and be more of that proactive versus just reactiveness. A lot of us in the workplace have been primed for reactive firefighting. And so that strategic insight is looking at that long term, thinking about what patterns are showing up. What do we think is going to show up in the future because of the patterns we're seeing that's leading up to it, but also what we're imagining is possible in the future, connecting the dots a little bit. The simple practice to start to get your brain really in good shape is actually connect with what you want to see. Describing the future in the way that you want to see it. If you're describing the future and all the things you're afraid of, you're probably tracking on what other people, even like with AI, oh, these are all the bad things that can happen with AI. A lot of this is worth considering. I'm not dismissing what we've got to tackle this environmental issue. We've got to tackle, the content stealing that's happening, the ethical ramifications behind it, all of that. I'm just, and it's when I'm hearing employees talk about it, they're all talking about what does this mean for my job? What does this mean for my job? And what I encourage you to do is, what do you want it to mean for your job? And if your first reaction is, I don't want it here, I understand. Set that to the side for now. Go, okay, I acknowledge that. If this was a world that I got to guarantee my own success and thriving, what would I want it to mean for me? I'll share for you what I want it to mean for me is that actually I would love to be in a place where I don't have to work crazy hours and do things, like just a machine all the time, that I'm actually in a place where maybe work is a smaller portion of my life, but the work that I'm doing is impacting a lot of different people. If I were to use a role model right now that has nothing to do with AI, is I would say Adele. Adele puts out an album and then she's gone for a couple of years. There's a few other artists that do the same thing. But the album is amazing. I don't know if you all like Adele. I happen to love Adele. And there's quite a few people who do. It's a good enough album. She goes out there, she makes this impact, and then she disappears for a few years and lives her life and does other things. And I just thought, like, oh, what if every human being could operate where they do this output that benefits a community in whatever community you support, and then got to just go be human for a while and was well paid for that. Now, I get that we're in a society where not everybody gets paid the same and not everyone's getting paid like Adele. I absolutely get that. But for now, I'm going to suspend current reality. I'm just going to think about, what do I want though? And that's what I want to see. The advanced practice is, how do you share your idealized future vision with people? Now, I just took a risk and I shared it with all of you, and you may all be thinking that I am way pie in the sky, or you may have really resonated with that. But that's what we've got to do, is we've got to risk and we've got to share things with folks. So we've got to tolerate risk, and we've got to be able to feel like we sense what that future is and we can get behind that future before everything is proven to us, before the data can prove that this is possible. All right, next one is nuanced judgment. We've got that systemic thinking, second order thinking, going beyond what is happening right now, being able to think about things across an organization, across the function, that gray area where things aren't always black and white. being able to hold, it's called Januszian thinking, but being able to hold opposing ideas at the same time. Two things could be same, it could be true at once, even if they don't agree with each other. So consider at least three layers of stakeholders whenever you're doing something with work. Go beyond just what that immediate audience is that you normally work with. An advanced one is identify and actually invite opposing viewpoints into the room to discuss the nuance of things when everybody's not on the same page, and be able to sit with the fact that that is okay to have happen. So you want to tolerate that ambiguity. You want to be able to think of the second order. What's that next domino after whatever it is that I do? And then reflective decision making, choosing well and acting on it. We can think, but we still need to take action. And I find a lot of us avoid the problem solving, the ability to discern. This is huge. AI produces a bunch of stuff for us. We still need that ability to discern what's quality and pull that out there. We need to be able to converge and bring multiple ideas together and find what's the best solution moving forward. Take that action. The practice to do is share your recommendation and viewpoint. Really take the risk out there that someone may not agree with it. That's why we've got to tolerate rejection. And the advanced one is practice skilled accountability. Accountability is when things go wrong that I can say like, look, that's on my watch. I'm going to take care of things and this is how I'm going to move forward. But I'm going to acknowledge what impact that had on people. I'm not going to try to skirt around it. But we've really got to get comfortable with people rejecting us and not being happy with us. And then knowing what to do to repair a relationship if we have to. But this is what the muscle that gets to outcomes. And we've got to be able to make an impact. All right. Those are the four muscles that I went through. I know I went through it pretty lightning fast. The last one is this relational impact. This is where we start to really impact beyond just our immediate surroundings. So we need to be authentic and vulnerable. So it's not just being honest, it's also being vulnerable in who we are, empathy and compassion, being able to imagine other people's experiences, but also boundary setting, that we're not just being swallowed up in other people's experiences, that we can collaborate, meaning we create something with others, not just, coordinating resources, but really co-creating something, being able to have productive conflict and what I call teaming, having each other's back and really being able to work as a cohesive unit. So simple practice is, oh, I got a little bit of a typo here. This is a repeat from the last one. But the simple practice with the relational one is start to ask for feedback from your peers and your from the people that you're around instead of waiting for someone to have to give you feedback. And then the advanced practice is looking for those opportunities where you can take greater amounts of accountability for how you show up and how you do things and how you impact others. Even if they may influence how you impact things, can you own what it is that you're doing in that relationship and not wait for someone to surface an issue for you? So we need to be able to tolerate emotional tension, that people don't feel the way that we want them to feel. And so we want to make sure that that relational impact is the part that actually leads to change, where you're going beyond just your surroundings. You're able to influence outcomes beyond just you. A couple of things that I want to touch on is cognitive debt. You're leveraging AI. You don't want AI doing all your thinking for you. So you want that discernment, because if not, you'll actually just start sounding like AI and you won't have that unique perspective to do. So you want to dive into those disciplines. Keeping your thinking in shape, use AI for those repeatable tasks, those tangible things, pulling that clay together. Do not delegate your voice, your thinking muscles, your intuition, and the decisions that you're making. That's where that human side comes in. How work is going to continue to evolve. It's probably going to shift from job title and org chart to more of a skill-based work environment where people are looking for team of teams, basically like, let's bring you in for the skills that you have versus the job title or department that you're in. I think we're going to see it's already been morphing that way anyways. Work is much more project-based than it's ever been, but more so it's going to move towards that where there's going to be some fluidity. So our tolerance for ambiguity is going to need to be there, but that doesn't mean that work that is needed from us, contribution that's needed from us, is going to disappear. It's just going to look different. So you want to think about moving from this idea of a high performer to more of a paradigm shifter, where you are able to look at where things are and being able to go, how do we make this better? Like I said, AI is going to do the faster and more. Our contribution is really going to be around how do we make things better? So this has been a lot. We do a lot of workshops around how to amplify those irreplaceable skills, whether it's helping people with creativity, sharpening critical thinking, enhancing that decision making, or accelerating on the innovation, um, please feel free to reach out to us. We can tailor a workshop for individuals to really dive into the area of any of those thinking muscles that I talked about that you'd like to build more on for you and your team. Feel free to bring this. I'm going to be sending everybody who's registered for the class a write-up on this, as well as a copy of this deck. You can share this with your coworkers, your manager, your team members, and see what might work best for you. We've got a fantastic webinar next month that builds off of this really well. Joe Jockwitz is going to be talking about how do you make sure that you're evolving with technology. This is going to be a nice spinoff of what we talked about today. Today we talked about the thinking skills, and he's going to go deeper into what it means to evolve with technology, whether that's your work or your output. That's going to be on June 30th. So got the QR code here. You want to scan it and make sure that you sign up and register. I'll also include that link whenever I send out the email. And of course, our contact information, feel free to reach out if something sparked for you today. Again, I thank you for your time. We went through a lot of stuff. Hopefully, got your brain percolating. I'm looking and no questions, just some comments that this really hit home. Thank you. So glad to hear that. And oh, hadn't thought about it from that perspective. Good to hear. Well, thank you so much for everybody for participating. You'll get a video recording of this if you want to rewind and look over anything that we talked about today, but always feel free to reach out. Hope you have a great thinking rest of your day.